The analogy I like to use, we can use like an investment analogy. If you're trying to grow your retirement account, you're not, most of us are not all of a sudden putting some huge lump sum, into our account. It's cumulative. There's a cumulative effect. So I really think that that's what we're doing with our everyday choices. We're investing in our body, in ourselves, in our health. Think of all the things you're eating, all the different lifestyle factors we're talking about as you're making those deposits into your account with the hope and the prayer that, I'm investing and then I'm going to have a very rich and long life.
Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate. I am a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. Recently, I invited listeners to take a survey about this show. It's important to me that I hear from you what you like hearing, what maybe isn't as interesting to you, where you would like to take this next. And I will have a bonus episode this Friday just coming out on the results of that, if you're curious. One of the questions asked what kind of episodes you enjoy listening to most. 84% of those answers selected nutrition. This makes so much sense to me because there is a cacophony of information about food and eating and nutrition and what to eat and what not to eat. All you have to do is pull up wherever you consume your news, wherever you see podcasts, and you're going to be hearing something, and often it's contradicting each other. I invited registered dietitian Nathalie Sessions to come today and to join us to simplify all things nutrition. I love making it more simple. I heard Nathalie speak at a Greater Houston Women's Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I knew I had to have her on and introduce you to her. She brings a holistic mindset approach to nutrition. I appreciate so deeply how she thinks about nutrition, how she guides people in nutrition. It is so much more than fat, grams, and proteins and carbohydrates and all of that stuff. So we talk about how our nutrition needs change as we get older. We talk some about gentle nutrition, which if you are familiar with intuitive eating, that is principle 10 in intuitive eating. And I do pose the current hot question because there's always a hot question. In the 90s, it was, what about the fat grams? Right now, it's protein. How much protein do we need? So I can't wait for you to hear her answer on that. Let me tell you a little bit about Nathalie. She is the founder and owner of Nutrition Sessions LLC. As a seasoned registered dietitian and certified nutrition and wellness coach, Nathalie's mission is to empower your eating so you live your most nutritious life for years to come without compromising taste and enjoyment. Through one-on-one and group programs, Nathalie offers personalized, non-diet solutions that fit your individual goals and lifestyle, so you stress less about what to eat, how to make it, and finally make peace with your plate. Confidently enjoy foods you love while maximizing your energy and optimizing your health. Now, speaking of optimizing and holistic health, I have another area of health that I have had so many conversations with friends over the last 6 months that are centered around our pelvic floor health. And this is something that is not talked about very often. So these are the jokes about peeing while we're sneezing or coughing, maybe doing any kind of high impact movements. One friend said when she walks too much or too long, her insides feel like they are dropping out. By the way, that's not okay. And another has to be be close to a bathroom at all times. So every time I have these conversations, I say the same thing. You have got to get the Tighten Your Tinkler program. You may remember my delightful conversation with the Tighten Your Tinkler girls, Jen Lormond and Christina Walsh, which was full of laughter about a heavy subject, pelvic floor health. I've personally gone through the program and am pleased to report I don't have to stop and cross my legs when I sneeze anymore. And even my nighttime bathroom trips have reduced. And I call that an all-nighter because I'm 48 and I'm not in college. And so that is my wonderful version of an all-nighter. My nagging lower back issue is significantly better as well, thanks to the program and the tools they provided. If you deal with any of these issues or more serious ones like prolapse, discomfort during or after intimacy, or just need to get everything kind of back in place after a hysterectomy, this program is for you. We want you to take control of your body and regain your confidence. Jen and Christina are the women you want in your corner, and they've generously offered $50 off using the code GRACEDHEALTH, GRACEDHEALTH. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. And if you haven't listened to our episodes, go back and check them out. As a bonus, this program is FSA and HSA eligible. Click the link, enroll, and use Graced Health for $50 off. Okay, let's bring on Nathalie. Nathalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amy. It's totally a pleasure to be here with you today.
I'm thrilled that you are here, and I was so excited to meet you at the Greater Houston Women's Chamber of Commerce. And once I heard you talking, I thought, you have got to come on my show because you have such a focus on, we'll just say, what's the right word? Maturing women, seasoned women.
However we want to say. Yes.
Exactly. So I always love hearing about people's stories because often our passions have a reason behind it. So I was wondering if you could really quickly just share what led you to the path of helping people in their nutrition and becoming a registered dietitian.
I career changed into becoming a dietitian, but food and nutrition and health have always been a personal passion of mine. I grew up in a family that really was all about food. And what I mean by that is I'm of French and Italian heritage. So need I say more? But, I had a grandpa who was a chef. I had a mom who loved to cook and was a health nut before that was like a cool thing. And so I just always grew up around an appreciation for food and the enjoyment of food, as well as, in a very indirect way, I guess, the health benefits of food and, the role that food plays in our overall health and well-being. So honestly, it wasn't until later in life, my late 30s, that I actually ended up going back to school to become a dietitian. I had started in a different industry altogether, but have been in the health and wellness space the majority of my career. And I really feel like it was my calling, and that it was really for years, this little voice, intuition, God, that voice, that internal voice speaking to me about pursuing it, as a profession. And I finally listened to the voice.
Yeah.
So that's the short version of the story.
Well, that's great. And I love, what's really encouraging to me, Nathalie, is I'm in what I call phase 3. So phase 1, I worked in corporate America. I was in product management and product marketing. And then my husband and I jointly decided that I would stay home with my kids. And so I now say I'm in phase 3. And it's really encouraging for me to hear other people who are walking in that as well, because I won't speak for you, but for me, there's always a little bit of like, oh gosh, I don't know. Do I belong here? What am I doing? And so I love hearing success stories like yourself of like, okay, I did a little bit of a pivot. I listened to that calling, and here you are shepherding women along in their nutrition. So yay for that.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I really appreciated about you when I heard you speak is is that you support the intuitive eating method. We have had several guests on here in various forms talking about intuitive eating. But for people who are not familiar with it, I was wondering if you could just give a very broad overview of what intuitive eating is.
Sure. So we're all born as intuitive eaters. And somehow along the way, culture, diet culture, etc., life, upbringing, a number of things, we tend to lose that. So intuitive eating, is really just a way to tune into your body, into your own natural hunger cues that ultimately, will guide you to getting the food and nutrients that you need. It's a very effective, it's not necessarily a specific method or anything. It's just kind of getting us back to the way we were born. It's a very effective, highly researched way to create and promote a healthy relationship with food. For a lot of people, that means getting off of what you might call the diet roller coaster. And the principles of intuitive eating, there are 10, allow you to really just reestablish, if needed, everybody's different, different part of the journey, but really get back to establishing trust, trusting yourself around, in your food choices. And again, promoting that healthy relationship with food and your body. And, it's just, there's lots of research to show intuitive eaters have, overall, health improvements and, desire to exercise more, all of the thing, all other lifestyle factors, less, emotional eating, so forth. So lots of benefits.
I have read the intuitive eating book, and I do believe that this makes the most sense at the same time because of all those things that you mentioned, whether it's diet culture or what we grew up with, or just seeing the headlines. It's kind of the hardest to quote unquote follow because we are having to retrain our brain so much.
Exactly. It really, the majority of embracing it and putting it into practice is a mindset shift. It's unlearning a lot of things that we've learned or may have learned. So that's not easy. That's not easy for everyone.
It's not. I have a little bit of a side question that I've heard people say before, because I'll talk a lot about listen to your body, and they say, I don't even know how to listen to my body. What kind of guidance or encouragement or cues would you give to someone who has just blocked out listening or they need to relearn how to do that?
That is a bigger question in a way. That is really what intuitive eating is all about, is, being able to go through a process. I mean, not to jump ahead too much, but I do have a program where that's exactly what it's about, is leading you through that process of those unlearnings, or just being able to know what to recognize. Like you said, your physical, we eat for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And all of them are acceptable reasons. We eat because it's there. We eat because it's the usual time that we typically eat that meal or whatnot. I guess just a quick tip, I guess I can offer for your question is, pausing and tuning into the physical cues, like the rumbling of the stuff, and paying attention to your hunger and your fullness. And again, it is a skill that I think you have to kind of learn.
It is. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. So the final, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but these 10 principles of intuitive eating kind of build on each other. And so my understanding is we'll work on one and then we work on two and all of that. So the final principle is gentle nutrition. And I kind of want to approach our conversation today under this umbrella or through the lens of gentle nutrition, because obviously intuitive eating we could have a whole conversation about that. But as we are talking about our aging bodies and eating to thrive in that, I want to make sure and just kind of put a stick in a stand of it's gentle nutrition, right? So first, just tell us a little bit about what that principle means and how that is different than following a particular nutrition plan.
What's important to note about intuitive eating and these 10 principles is that, unlike other, diets and things, you don't need to do them in order. It's not necessarily a certain order, although with the exception maybe of the 10th principle being honoring your health with gentle nutrition. It's intentionally the last principle because all that leads up to that, before you're kind of introducing the nutrition piece, you are breaking down and like that mindset we were talking about just a moment ago, knowing how to honor your hunger, tune into your hunger, first and foremost, really being able to get in a place where you're rejecting the diet mentality, learning how to cope with your emotions in a kind way, giving grace to yourself, with all of that. So there is a process to it, and there are the different principles. And like I said, intentionally, if we're going to go through it, it is the last principle. So, did you want me to go ahead and talk a little bit about that?
Talk a little bit about what gentle nutrition means,
Right.
as opposed to like the firm
Right.
nutrition that we see everywhere else.
Right. So it's really about looking at your food choices and your taste buds. It's just the whole equation of your eating experience. And it's really important to consider, what you feel like after you eat certain foods. So it's really embracing the entire eating experience. Whether you enjoy the food you're eating or you don't, if it's really delicious or it's not, it's how it tastes to you and how do you feel after you eat it. What has really become lost in this diet culture that we're in is the satisfaction piece is hugely missing. Ultimately, if there is a goal to intuitive eating, it's really, having authentic health or optimal health by honoring, that inner voice, that attunement of hunger and feeling fulfilled, an element of satisfaction and fulfillment, that ultimately presents itself as authentic health.
What I find interesting that I think is counter to how many people feel is you say you grew up in a French and Italian heritage and culture. And so if you were to ask anyone on the street, is Italian food healthy? People would probably be like, oh, the pasta, the cheese, whatever. And what I really love about your story is the nourishment you received probably from a familiar perspective and the love that you received because, it just, that's how we show love. That's how I show love is by making food for people, my family definitely. Or friends or whatever. And how that provided you a little bit more balance in being able to receive all of that without labeling food as good or bad or healthy or unhealthy. And if your mom, I would say too, without knowing anything about your upbringing or your mom, even though she was, you did a little quote, a health nut, it sounds like she had a really great mindset as well. Like, I'm going to provide quality food, but I'm not going to make too big a deal about it because we're still going to enjoy lasagna or whatever that was.
Right. Yeah. It's really about, yes, exactly right. I just totally agree with everything that you said, that it's just being able to get to that place, and that path may be quite challenging for the majority in my experience. And I know I'm very, entrenched in my nutrition world. So I probably see it more than, someone else does. But yeah, it makes me sad. Like, I'm on a mission to help people stop suffering with this because there's no need to suffer.
Yes. And there really is that you're right. There is so much suffering and so much inner dialogue. Okay, so I'd like to hone in a little bit on needs specifically for women in the age group of my community, which is 40s, 50s, 60s, I hear a lot from, and I am one of these people. I'm 48 years old, and it's like, what is happening to my body? Like, we were good. Like, we were great. We were good. I was content. I was happy or whatever. And then either overnight, over the course of 6 months, in my case, you wake up one day and you're like, what the heck? So talk to us some about the nutritional differences that we may need as we are getting older. And again, with the caveat of gentle nutrition and really paying attention to how the food makes us feel.
Sure. So it's totally normal, to experience these kind of shifts as we age and get older. I've experienced that too. I mean, just because I'm a dietitian, I'm human too, and I'm in my early 50s. So, shifts happen, and that's a part of the journey. And support is available to help with those transitions. So, I'd first want to just say that I think it's really important, and again, this really ties nicely in with intuitive eating and what we're talking about today, is tuning inward, knowing your numbers, I guess you could say. So, a first step might be to be familiar with your own health numbers, your blood work, your hormone levels, knowing where you are, and then, getting the education that you may need. It may require you to become your own advocate. And again, not just kind of not taking status quo as the answer, or that's just the way it is, or that's just what happens to women. No, it doesn't have to be that way. That is not an acceptable answer. So if you're getting answers like that, just really trying to do what you can to empower yourself. I just think having that baseline and knowing so that you can know how to, I'm all about root cause, like what is causing this? Can we shift this from lifestyle? Is it a nutritional deficiency? Is it a hormone imbalance? And all of those things that we're talking about, your blood work, your body composition, the hormonal changes are all influenced by food. Mm-hmm. So I think what I can best offer listeners here on this question is introducing the idea of variety, moderation, and balance, when it comes to eating, which again, just are part of intuitive eating. So not limiting yourself with your food choices, getting enough variety. One, that helps with the satisfaction factor and not getting bored and, with eating the same thing over and over again. But also, that along with the moderation, in all foods being able to fit into an eating plan gives you a much broader spectrum of nutrients. So you're not going to miss out, because if you're constantly eating the same thing, or you're restricting a certain food group or certain type of food or anything like that, the way I see it, you're missing out. You're depriving your body of essential nutrients. Not all foods have the same nutritional value, but right. Still, just that variety and balance and moderation are important.
I think too, what I love is being the privileged person who gets to have so many different conversations with, all across the board, because we talk about physical, mental, and spiritual health. It almost doesn't matter who I'm talking to. If they're an expert in something and they come on here, we hear a lot about, basically the variety of plants. Is so important. And like the gut microbiome, and eating that variety and moderation too. I've heard on the Huberman podcast, like moderation of these amounts, not over quantity, is so important in helping our gut, which can also help our overall health and our mental health. And so I love hearing everybody talking about their own specific thing, but in fact, it all works together.
It really does. It all comes down to the basics. A big thing that I do in my work is helping people get back to basics. I think just in today's world, I know that sounds like really old, but there's just so much conflicting information. There's so much incorrect information, and I'm, speaking of course to nutrition. And so it's just, I love, I'm very passionate about getting people back to the basics, providing nutrition education, if you will, that, because that's not something most people get in life unless they seek it out themselves. Staying well hydrated, employing these principles we're talking about today when it comes to your food, chewing your food is something else that might not seem related to answer your question, but digestion begins in our mouth. We eat, most people report to me, most of my clients report they eat very fast. So chewing your food, I mean, this all again ties into honoring your hunger, honoring your body, honoring your health by slow down, chew your food. That's going to help you savor it more, enjoy it. You see, it's all interconnected. The pleasure, the nutrition, all of it, it's all connected. And then I'd probably be remiss, if I didn't share too, that, to consider, as we age and navigate the changes that our body can go through, we need to consider other lifestyle factors, which I know you talk a lot about on your show. Like, so stress, sleep, movement, all of those things affect how, when, and why we eat. Yeah. So bearing that in mind, if we're sleep deprived, we're not getting enough quality sleep, then that may affect and impact the food choices we make. Stress, of course, is a whole other topic unto itself, but I would include in that discussion of stress, digital toxicity, meaning, just use of different devices and, all of this. I know it might not seem related to nutrition, but how are you nourishing your mind? Like you said, body, mind, spirit, soul, all of it's connected. And then, of course, even specific things like tobacco use and even artificial sweeteners and things can be something to definitely consider.
That's a great point. And I'm really glad that you brought it up, because the more I learn, the more I am learning that it's a holistic process. I mean, we just can't compartmentalize it. I do have a question. I'd be curious. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous to hear your answer.
Uh-oh.
But when you talk about chewing your food, what are your thoughts on having like a shake where it's kind of blended up and you've got I know for me, just in terms of time, and I don't consider myself to be a fast eater. I will say that I eat, I'm always the last one at my table to finish, but throw in a little bit of, I use plant-based protein, throw a little bit of protein powder in there and spinach and, blueberries or whatever it is. What are your, I'm kind of nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. Don't be scared.
What are your thoughts on having a meal a day as in something that you're not necessarily chewing?
Yeah. So just what I'd like to distinguish there is that, again, I want to reiterate that all foods fit, and, that just, you wouldn't necessarily want to rely on all of your meals. The body, the brain recognizes food intake differently in liquid form versus solid. So that's where kind of the chewing comment came in, that it is part of the digestive process, but, it's not the same. What you were talking about, has a lot of components in there that aren't completely liquid. So yeah, I guess I just want to alleviate any concern you might have. Certainly a high quality smoothie like what you're talking about certainly can fit in the plan. I guess the only thing I'd say is maybe just consider not always having it in that format, having, again, that variety in the texture and so forth that you're preparing. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I am glad to hear that, because sometimes, again, it's just a matter of this is just an easy way to eat. And I know that I probably should be a little more focused on the satisfaction, but there are times that I just need to eat and then I need to move on with my day. And I take pleasure and savor the other meals in my day. And also just as my own personal thing, I have found that I need to have, I make these little, peanut butter balls and, that kind of stuff, or muffins or whatever. And I do want to have something besides that to chew. So maybe that's what my body is needing in addition to, in addition to drinking.
Yes.
So let's talk some about, I know you have a really strong focus on aging well and this age group that my community is. What are some of the nutritional approaches that we can take to age well and to thrive and function and feel well?
Really might sound like a broken record here, but it's really all of these things that we've been touching on today already. I'm a little biased in that and and the research is there to back me up, but like, our nutrition, what we eat, influences our overall health and well-being, and therefore our aging and longevity, by about 80 to 90%. So I think, establishing a practical, realistic, way of eating and food plan, that works for you, so that, it's sustainable and works for your life. Some of the things we already mentioned, the hydration and the variety, the moderation. I just want to mention those again, the balance. I think there's a real opportunity for people to, boost their vegetable intake. Many people are, just from what they report, they're just not getting enough. And so if we kind of tie this back to our discussion around intuitive eating, it's really about getting enough fruits and vegetables, getting enough grains, focusing on at least half whole grains, enough fish, enough fluids, primarily water, and, choosing unprocessed foods more often. And also remembering other things fit too. But if to answer that, the analogy I like to use, we can use like an investment analogy. If you're trying to grow your retirement account, you're not, most of us are not all of a sudden putting some huge lump sum, into our account. It's cumulative. There's a cumulative effect. So I really think that that's what we're doing with our everyday choices. We're investing in our body, in ourselves, in our health. Think of all the things you're eating, all the different lifestyle factors we're talking about as you're making those deposits into your account, with the hope and the prayer that, I'm investing and that I'm going to, have a very rich and long life.
I have a mentor who will say, Pete McCall, he's been on the show a couple times, and I can link it in the show notes, but he says he just kind of shoots for a B average. Like with his eating, which I really like, because, and it's kind of that investment too. When we invest in things, they're going to go up, they're going to go down. And then the hope is that we are just continuing to grow that over the course of time. And
Right.
things like I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, like vacations, well, that's going to be a little bit of a dip, and that's okay, because I'm getting enjoyment and nourishment in other ways. Maybe not necessarily having this, perfectly executed plate or anything like that, but it's pleasurable in other ways.
Yeah. It's one meal is not going to derail your health,
Amen. Say it again, Natalie. Say it again.
Yes. Praise be. Yes. So, health, like you just said so beautifully, it's more than food. It's the social connection, the tradition, the culture, it's so many things. And it's not about perfection. It's about progress.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, now this is going to, I have one question. I just had a client ask me this the other day, and I said, I don't really know the full answer to this, but she said, I drink between 80 and 160 ounces of water a day. And she was like, I'm drinking it throughout the day. As long as it's with me, I'm drinking it. Mm-hmm. She said, but then I have, crackly bones and this and that. And she's like, my mouth is dry. She goes, how do I know when I am fully hydrated? Because you're talking about drinking your water. And so my answer is look at your urine. But I was wondering if you had any other guidance on that.
Yeah, I would definitely, so two things. So one would be, yes, one way to check in with yourself around hydration is to look at your urine output. And generally you're looking for a pale yellow, unless you're taking a supplement or something that's going to discolor your urine. Because by the time you're thirsty, it's said that we're already mildly dehydrated. So thirst is not the best indicator of hydration. Other than that, what I would say, there could be so many reasons of what's going on. So we want to make sure, again, there's no underlying medical issue or nutrient deficiency. So that's where, my suggestion to make sure you're getting regular blood work and any other testing or screening that might be necessary to get to root cause. I consider myself a resource for you, your listeners. If I'm not the right person for that, of course, just getting you connected to the right practitioners to help with that.
Okay, that's good. Okay, now I am sure you cannot go anywhere as a registered dietitian and have someone ask you about protein, and I'm not going to let you go either without asking you that. There is so much information about protein, and I have watched documentaries on plant-based eating. I follow very well, not only respected, but well researched people who say other things about protein. And
Yeah.
doggone it, if this wasn't a faith-based podcast, I'd probably use other words. It's confusing. You can't turn around with someone telling you something different. So
Yeah.
help us understand. And the other thing too that I have seen is as we get older, we do want to continue to have enough protein and perhaps even more, because as we get older, we do have sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss. You can't do anything about it, but if you're strength training, you need to have that protein to keep your muscles from losing. So it's a very complicated question, but I just would love to hear your thoughts about protein needs.
Sure. So, obviously I can't give specific advice because my answer is individual needs vary based on a number of different factors. I'm sure you know this. I'm not entirely sure where this obsession, which I'll call it, with protein has come from in our society. Generally, I mean, this is super general, but generally, if anything, a lot of people are overdoing protein. Again, kind of go back to this whole discussion around, moderation and balance, but the amount of protein you need is going to be different than what I need, based on, again, age, health status, activity level, hydration. If I were actually, calculating and estimating your protein needs, I'd be asking all these questions to come up with a recommendation. I know it's such a popular question, but there's so many myths and so many misconceptions, and I'll do whatever I can to, debunk those myths. But I just come back to, including a variety of protein, or different protein foods, getting a whole wide spectrum there to get the full like amino acid profile and everything. But, like you mentioned, activity, and yes, you need some protein to help with muscle recovery and all of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need a ton more. It may be more of a timing, so including protein at most, if not all of your meals, is another strategy. So, those are kind of my immediate question or answers. But it just varies per person.
Well, I think that's the best answer you could give, quite honestly. And I appreciate that because it does vary per person. And I have, as you can imagine, had a ton of conversations with people, and I mean, it's just all over the board. Is that something that you work with your clients on to developing? I mean, again, under that lens of gentle nutrition. So not getting like super consumed by, you have to have 122.5 grams of protein per day, but
Right,
just like this kind of stuff and figuring out like, okay, well, Amy, this is your body composition and this is how much muscle you have and this is your activity level. This is probably what you need to shoot for versus someone who maybe not, has a different lifestyle.
I absolutely do estimate, with my coaching clients, absolutely. I crunch those numbers, if you will, and do that. We may or may not discuss it because honestly, I don't lead with that. So even though I may be doing that as part of my assessment and putting together my recommendations for my client, then I have really powerful meal planning, tools and resources for them where those recommendations are kind of working in the background. So if a client asks me, I'm not going to go, well, I'm not going to tell you, how much protein, I will tell you what my estimations are if that's something you really want to know. But I focus more on, okay, now we kind of know this is how much you need. So what will your meals look like? What foods do you need to incorporate to get you there? and focus more on that. What foods are you going to eat to meet your needs?
Okay, that's good. And as a side note, I would like to, I don't know if you're listening, if you are aware of this, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, but registered dietitians are really the only people who have within their scope of practice to provide individualized meal plans. And so, like, I know for my, like, I'm certified nutrition coach through NASM. It was a wonderful baseline program. Now I can tell people to eat carbs, proteins, and fats and drink their water. Like it is, I mean, it's wonderful. And I think it's great, but I'll just kind of as a side note, like, I think it's very easy to get on TikTok and get something. And that is not necessarily what is going to meet your unique needs. And that's why it is helpful to work with a registered dietitian.
Yeah, I really appreciate your affinity, for recognizing that in dietitians. So yeah, just very briefly there, I'll just say, registered dietitian, we are food and nutrition experts. We go through multiple layers of education, training, and we have to maintain our licenses with continuing education, et cetera. So every registered dietitian is a nutritionist. Not every nutritionist is a dietitian. And please stop. And this is a note to your audience, please stop Googling about nutrition. Please stop TikToking, whatever, about nutrition. And whether it's me or someone else, just find a credentialed expert, whoever you might choose to work alongside to get support and accountability. Check their credentials. Like, that's really important. There are legitimate, credential nutrition programs other than registered dietitian, but we are a bit unique in that we can provide what's called medical nutrition therapy. So that's where some of those specifics come into play that other certifications, don't encompass that, I guess you could say.
Yes. And I certainly appreciate that. I heard a young woman one time, she was talking about what she did at the gym, and she said, well, I pretty much just do whatever I see on TikTok. And I'm like, no.
I guess it's who's on TikTok. I mean, there are registered dietitians on TikTok.
Well, this is true. So look at the credentials as well. Okay. So we don't have to get in the weeds of that, but no. That is one thing that I think is good for people to be aware of too, especially with those individual planned. And I like how you talk about
personalized.
Yes. Medical nutrition. Okay. So now I know you have a program called Making Peace with Your Plate. That registration, as this is coming out, is going on right now. So tell us some about that and what people will gain if they move forward and participate in that program.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Again, depending on when people are listening, we might be right in the midst of enrollment for a new program I'm introducing called Making Peace with Your Plate. It's a 14-day group coaching virtual program, and it's where I lead you through a really powerful process to make peace with your plate, make peace with your food. It is completely based on the intuitive eating principles. So it's kind of a deep dive, but it's only 14 days. So you might think of it as kind of a mini masterclass in a way, but it's very experience. You get to experience it. There's different activities, and I'm there to lead you through it and, start you on the path toward, getting out of the diet cycle, or just overall just wanting to heal your relationship with food, stop obsessing over it, stressing over it, and just be at ease and peace with it.
And that is just for anyone who is interested in it.
That could be for anyone. Yeah. That's looking to make peace and have that freedom, have food freedom and food confidence about food and eating and your body and being comfortable with all of it. So I don't know if now's a good time to mention, but, I have a special gift, I guess you could say, for listeners who do want to, regardless of when you're listening, they can download a hunger and fullness scale. That's a great first step. And so you can go to nutritionsessions.com/scale, SCALE, and get your copy. It'll, help you recognize those natural hunger cues, help you distinguish, physical hunger from different types of other hunger, emotional desire to eat, etc., and help you gauge different where you land on that scale, and so that you're eating to fullness and so forth. So that's a great first step.
That's great. That's great. So yes, absolutely go grab that. And Nathalie, tell us really quickly again where people can connect with you if they're listening and don't have access to the show notes off right now.
Sure. So again, nutritionsessions.com is my website. I am on Instagram at Nutrition Sessions, and Facebook, Nutrition Sessions, LinkedIn as well.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Okay. So I have a question I ask all my guests, which is, I love learning about people's tattoos. I have found when people, most of the time, when they decide to put something on their body for the rest of their lives, they will often have a story behind it. So I was wondering if you have a tattoo, if you would mind sharing what it is. And if you don't have one, but you had to get one, what would it be and where would it go?
Okay. So I do not have one. I do not like physical pain. So maybe I'm just a wimp, but I've never had a desire to get one. So I don't have one, and I likely never would, but to play along here, I
pretend it's pain-free.
Play the game. What I might get would be very small and discreet. And it might be some like a little icon like I often use in my business, which is like I'm very drawn to palm trees and like little palm leaves or little green leaves. And that's what a lot of my branding has. And I always wondered, there's kind of a story behind this. So I didn't know it. I kind of chose that as just kind of my color scheme for my business. And, again, you'll see this leaf. And I looked it up one day. I was like, what's the symbolism of palms and palm leaves? And they actually represent longevity. And I almost cried because I was like, oh my God, because I'm so passionate about longevity and, healthy living, optimal health. My grandmother lived to be 100 years old, and she's a huge inspiration. So who knew I'd be talking about my 100-year-old grandma and tattoos, but so I would say, a little palm leaf.
Okay. I love that. That's a great story. Thank you for playing along. We'll just, in this game, we will say that it is a pain-free tattoo that you can receive. Before we let Nathalie share the one simple thing, just a friendly reminder that if you are dealing with any of those P issues or anything else, check out the Tighten Your Tinkler program and use code GRACEDHEALTH for $50 off. Information's in the show notes. I'm going to let you have the final word. What is the one simple thing you would like my community to remember about this conversation?
Honor your hunger. And, you might interpret that in a variety of ways, but, on the heels of our conversation today, I just can't iterate enough how food is meant to be nourishing and pleasurable. And that is all about you tuning in to yourself and honoring your hunger.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a great day.